Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and this is the Alpha A7 Mark III, Sony's new entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera aimed at a wide variety of photographers and videographers. It packs a 24-megapixel full-frame sensor, 4K video, 10 frames per second shooting, and a 693-point AF system for the princely sum of $2,000 or £2,000. I've been shooting with the A7 Mark III at the official Sony press launch, so in this video I'll go over the headlines and also my first impressions. As always, if you want the latest camera news from these events, please subscribe to my channel. It's that icon in the bottom right corner. Go on, you know you want to click it. Thank you for your support. Now, on with the video. The A7 Mark III may share the same 24-megapixel resolution as its predecessor, but does it with a brand new back-illuminated sensor and the latest image processor, and that combination delivers better quality at higher ISOs. Sony reckons there's 15 stops of dynamic range here and believes the image quality to be closer to higher-end rivals like the Nikon D850 rather than the D750 or the Canon 6D Mark II. Like other recent alpha bodies, the sensor is stabilised within the body using a 5-axis system that's good for up to 5 stops of compensation, not quite the 5.5 of the A7R Mark III, but still very respectable, and it works for video too. I filmed this with the 85mm f1.8 lens, which does not have optical stabilisation. The sensor also features an upgraded autofocus system with a whopping 693 embedded phase detect AF points across 93% of the frame. That's the same as the Alpha A9, and these are complemented by a 425 contrast-based area system that works down to light levels of -3 EV. The AF system isn't driven as fast as the A9, but the algorithms are shared, so the tracking is very respectable. Sony reckons the AF performance of the A7 Mark III is roughly similar to the A7R Mark III, albeit with more phase detect points. Eye detection is also available, now in single and continuous autofocus modes. I filmed this through the A7 Mark III viewfinder to demonstrate it in single AF, where eye detection is enabled by default. Like the A7R Mark III, you need to hold a button down to enable it during continuous AF. This view also demonstrates the burst speed of 8 frames per second with live view, although you can increase that to 10 frames per second if you're willing to put up with a slight lag in the viewfinder, and the buffer should be good for around 177 JPEGs. Like the A7R Mark III, you can enjoy the full 10 frames per second with continuous autofocus when shooting in the silent mode, which employs an electronic shutter. Again, like the A7R Mark III, you can capture 14-bit RAW files too in silent mode and at 10 frames per second, so long as you have uncompressed RAW selected. If you opt for compressed RAW, the depth falls to 12-bit. The viewfinder itself employs a 2.36 million dot OLED panel with a 60 frames per second refresh rate. This is one of the differences with the A7R Mark III and the A9, both of which employ more detailed 3.69 million dot panels with a choice of 60 or 120 frames per second refresh. This means it's not quite as easy to manually focus without magnification on the A7 Mark III, but the viewfinder image is still crisp, detailed and smooth. If you prefer, you can of course compose with the screen, which as before can tilt upwards by around 90 degrees or down by around 45 degrees. So sadly still no chance to flip it forward to face the subject. You'll need an external HDMI monitor for that. The screen isn't a white magic panel either, unlike the A7R Mark III, but at least you can still boost the brightness to sunny weather when filming 4K or high frame rate 1080p. In a welcome upgrade over the Mark II, the screen is now touch sensitive, allowing you to tap to reposition the AF area or pull focus during movies. You can also use it as a touchpad when composing through the viewfinder. But like other recent Sony bodies, there's not a lot else you can do with the touch screen. You can't tap the large friendly icons in the function menu, nor tap your way through the main menu system. You can't even swipe through images in playback. You can, however, double tap in playback to enlarge and push the image around afterwards. The A7 Mark III body inherits a number of aspects from the A9 and A7R Mark III, including dual SD card slots, although like those models, only one of those slots will exploit the extra speed of UHS 2 cards. There's also an AF on button and a relocated movie record button by the viewfinder, as well as an AF joystick and a rather tactile rear wheel. In a huge upgrade over its predecessor, the A7 Mark III employs the latest Z-series battery, and thanks to a lower power screen and sensor, manages to squeeze an industry-leading 610 shots with EVF, or 710 with the screen. That's more than double what you'd expect with the A7 Mark II, and indeed more than any mirrorless camera to date under SEPA conditions. Battery life really isn't an issue anymore with these latest mirrorless cameras. In terms of connectivity, there's microphone and headphone jacks, and also twin USB ports with USB-C and mini USB for simultaneous high-speed tethering and USB power. Unlike the A7R Mark III and A9 though, there's no PC sync port for external lighting. The mode dial also lacks a locking button in the middle, which seems like a bit of a deliberate move just to differentiate it from the higher end models. It's a bit of a shame, so keep an eye on that when you remove the camera from your bag. I'm pleased to report the A7 Mark III is weather sealed, although perhaps not quite as robust as the higher end models in the series. It may feature magnesium alloy in the top and front covers and the internal frame, but unlike the A7R Mark III, it lacks magnesium alloy on the rear cover. Sony also rates the maximum shutter actuations at 200,000 compared to 500,000 on the A7R Mark III. The A7 Mark III will film 4K video at 24 to 30p and at 60 or 100 megabits per second. That's a major upgrade over the Mark II, which of course was limited to just 1080p. You can film in full frame or cropped APS-C modes. This clip was filmed in full frame 4K at 30p. Now, unlike the A7R Mark III, the full frame mode is preferred here, downsampling from 20 megapixels worth of information, but only when you're filming in 24 or 25p. If you're filming in 30p using the full frame, it actually employs a 1.2 times crop and slightly less data. So for the best quality, film full frame in 24 or 25p. Switch to the APS-C mode though, and all those modes are the same quality, and they all start with 8.7 megapixels worth of data, and the camera reduces it fractionally to 4K with no binning or any further crop at any frame rate. There's also 1080p up to 120p, and the addition of the S&Q mode, which can interpret footage in camera to speed it up or slow it down. I captured this at 120p and interpreted it to 30p in camera using the S&Q mode for a 4-time slowdown. You can also use the S&Q mode to capture at 1 frames per second and play back at 60p for a 60 times speed up, and this makes up in some part for a continued lack of time-lapse video facilities, but it will only do it in 1080p, not 4K. Yes, sadly, there's still no interval timer, time-lapse movies or bulb timers built into the camera, nor any chance to download apps to provide this functionality. Now, as I've said before, I'm quite happy for Sony to remove the apps from these bodies because I never really liked the way they were implemented, but it really does need to integrate their functionality into the main user interface. But in terms of wireless, there's still Wi-Fi, aided by NFC, and the addition of Bluetooth to maintain a low-power connection with your phone for things like seamless location tagging. Once set up, this works really well in practice. Overall, the A7 Mark III looks like a very impressive specification for the money and redefines what we can expect from a so-called entry-level or basic model. It's certainly very competitive against full-frame DSLRs, not to mention the recent raft of higher-end APS-C and Micro Four Thirds options. It even makes you look twice at the A7R Mark III, which costs over 50% more, with the only real benefits being the 42 megapixel sensor, high-res pixel shift mode, high-res viewfinder, PC sync port and lockable mode dial. Certainly for all but the most demanding resolution seekers, the A7 Mark III gives you most of the A7R Mark III at a much lower price. As always, head on over to cameralabs.com for my detailed reviews, and again, if you want the latest camera news and reviews in video form, please subscribe to my channel here. I'd love to hear what you think about the A7 Mark III, so let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and share. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.